Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast. Each week, I sit down with a different industry thought leader and we discuss the latest cybersecurity trends, how those trends are affecting the work of Infosec professionals, while offering tips for those trying to break in or move up the ladder in the cybersecurity industry. 2020 is right around the corner, and with it, there's another presidential election coming up again, with all its attendant security issues. So for 2020, Infosec is attempting to get ahead of potential issues. Use our free election security training resources to educate poll workers and volunteers on the cybersecurity threats they face during the election season. For more information about how to download your training packet, go to infosecinstitute.com/IQ/election-security-training or visit the link in the description. Our guest today is Bob Stevens, VP of Americas at Lookout. He is on the front lines of people and organizations working to protect the 2020 election against security tampering and quickly spreading disinformation campaigns along mobile channels. For this election, with potentials for cyber intrusion and malfeasance practically inevitable, it's going to be important to address these issues up front rather than figure them out after the fact as to what we should have done. Bob and I are going to discuss some strategies already in place, some things we should be doing but aren't, and talk about the ramifications for inaction. Bob Stevens is Vice President of Americas at Lookout. In his role, Bob works to provide mobile threat visibility and protection to federal agencies across military, civilian, and intelligence sectors. Bob has more than 25 years' experience building federal businesses, teams, and go-to-market strategies. Prior to joining Lookout, Bob led Semantic Federal, a $275 million operation with over 100 team members. He also led the development of Juniper Networks federal systems, growing it to $120 million in just 6 years. Bob, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Chris. Happy to be here.
Great. So in a previous episode, we had a guest who discussed some of the security issues that came with the 2016 elections, as well as concerns that were surrounding the then upcoming midterm election in 2018. Could you summarize some of these from your own personal research? What were some of the biggest security issues that happened then, and how many of those are still possible in 2020?
Well, I think the one that most people are aware of is the Podesta email hack, in
Right.
which lots and lots of emails were taken and then used, against a particular candidate during the election, and potentially swayed the outcome of that. I know that as a result of that, the campaigns are trying to take a different approach when it comes to cybersecurity for the upcoming election, but there's probably still a lot to be done. Just as an example, and I'll talk a lot about this today because Lookout's focus is on the mobile side.
Yes.
There's a lot of action that needs to be taken on the mobile front.
Okay. So I guess let's jump right into that. Mobile is obviously part of it, but how have the attack vectors changed, if at all, based on what we're seeing in the run-up to 2020 versus previous elections?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, the campaigns are, definitely aware of what could happen because, it's based on experience at this point. And they've done a good job of, protecting their servers, their websites, their traditional endpoint devices. And what I mean by that is the desktops or laptops that they use. I think the biggest difference for the upcoming campaign is going to be the fact that people are using mobile as a means to get their message out to the voters.
Okay.
And we only see that growing. We saw it increase in the 2018 the midterm election, and it's definitely going to happen for 2020. And I think Obama started this trend, using social media to help him get elected.
Yes.
And it's just grown from there. The current president, of course, uses, as everyone knows, uses social media on a regular basis.
A lot of social media. So can you give me some sort of concrete example of how, because you said, they're going to be using mobile to, increase their message. Can you give me some examples or platforms, or how does this change the sort of the delivery or even the message of the message, I guess?
Sure. Yeah. One example is is text messages.
Yes.
A candidate's going to be in the local area. They want to get the word out to as many voters as they possibly can, so they show up for their campaign rallies. So that's text messages is one. Also, the social media. Most people are checking social media on mobile devices today. As I sit on an airplane, in most cases, it's inevitable the person next to me is going through their Twitter feed to see what's going on. That's where a lot of the news comes from today. So, that's just two examples of the way that I think the campaigns are going to use or are using mobile devices today to try and get the word out to all the voters.
Yeah, I know. I remember in the midterms there was a lot of sort of text-based get out the vote efforts as well, and I imagine with a few modifications you could very easily launch a text-based get out the vote, but give them the wrong date for voting, or send out wrong information or things like that.
Yeah, that's what they have to worry about. I mean, the mobile device is well, two things. One is it's less likely to be secured
Hmm.
because I think that most people believe that they're inherently secure.
Yes.
Um, and and there's a lot of different attack vectors for a mobile device. There's, like we just talked about, the text messages. There's in-app malware that can be put on a device. If I can somehow get on that person's device, I can start to steal all their credentials. I can turn
Yep.
on their cameras. I can steal their emails. There's so many things that I can do with the mobile device, and because it is largely unprotected, it's becoming a larger and larger target for adversaries, and in this case, probably criminals,
Yes.
because another thing I would do is I'd send them bogus text messages for campaign donations,
Hmm.
and try and get them to put the money into my account versus
Right.
the candidate's account. So
Yeah, this can be a much larger sort of attack surface than just getting my candidate elected. It can also be, there's just so much money and so much interaction going on over a course of an presidential election these days that, yeah, there's lots of room for sort of secondary criminals to sneak in, I suppose.
yes, absolutely, yeah. And I'd be surprised if it hasn't started already.
Hmm.
One of the things you have to worry about on a mobile device is, of course, phishing. Uh,
Yep.
it's kind of amazing we're still talking about phishing in this day and age.
Yeah.
You'd think we would have solved it years and years ago. And for the most part, we have on desktops or laptops, via email anti-phishing tools.
Yep.
But on mobile devices, there's so many different ways to phish that device. I can send a text message.
Yep.
You click on the link, I infect you with malware. I reset everything so that it looks like you haven't been affected at all, but now I'm on your device.
Yep.
I can send it in messaging apps like Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. I can send you a link or URL. Um, I can also send you an email, and it's much harder for the user of that device to figure out that they've been phished versus your traditional desktop and laptop.
Yeah. So there's been some talk in the past, and I'm not sure if you can necessarily speak to this, but that there'd been talk that as soon as the 2020 presidential election, we could be moving towards an all electronic voting process, and it doesn't seem like we're any closer to that now than we were before. Do you think that will have any sort of bearing on things in the future? Is that something that's still worth moving towards, or is sort of having a paper trail and stuff, is that still going to be too important to move this to an all electronic sphere, do you think?
Well, I think the current thinking is for most of the voting is that the air gap systems that they use. And what I mean by that is it's not connected to any network,
Hmm.
so it's a lot more difficult to hack. Will be around for a while, but a lot of states have already started allowing mobile voting. Uh,
Yes. Yeah.
yes, for like
Okay.
West Virginia. West Virginia was the first one.
Hmm.
They did it, I think, in the 2016, it might have been I think it was the midterm elections.
Okay.
They allowed absentee voting, and
Hmm.
now there's 14 other states that are going to adopt the same. So I think that that's the precursor of where we're headed. And of course, if you're going to allow mobile voting, you are opening it up for the adversaries to get in and potentially change the results of the election. Years ago, you and I may not have talked about absentee ballots playing a role in an election. I think for the
Right.
most part, they were ignored because they didn't really mean any, or they didn't amount to anything.
Yeah, it
Well,
was a handful. Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
it was a handful, and
Hmm.
but that has changed.
Yeah.
How many recounts happened during the midterm
Yep.
as a result of absentee ballots, and
Sure.
and the absentee ballots changing the campaign. So I think that I think it's moving in that direction. I don't know exactly when we'll get there, but
Right.
but uh, but the signs are pointing to a different voting mechanism.
Do you think there's any sort of like, if obviously the will to do it is one thing, but do you think that there is a scenario in which we could make mobile voting safe, or is it just too inherently unsafe in your opinion?
I think we can. There's you've got to protect a few things,
Yep.
and like the application itself, has to be secure. You have to ensure that the integrity of the device is the device is not compromised
Yep.
in any way before you allow anybody to enter their credentials or their votes. The banking industry's figured it out.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right. Exactly. The, the
so
the the tech is there. It's
yeah,
just
exactly.
yeah.
It's educating people to understand that they need, some sort of, anti-phishing, anti-malware,
Yep.
protection from network man-in-the-middle attacks, things of that nature on
Right.
the device.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that's one of those double-edged swords where it's like we might be able to unroll something like that, but then it's going to be sort of prohibitive to people if you say, well, you're only allowed to vote by your phone if you have anti-malware devices on there and you have all this sort of software and things like that. And people say, well, I don't have that, and then who knows? But
Yeah.
so along with hacking, I wanted to hear more about your research into disinformation campaigns that could be launched. It's one thing to tamper the voting box, but something completely different to spread wrong information via social media or spread news about how candidate X is losing to discourage voters who might be coming in after work, from even bothering to vote at all. Things like this are already ramping up with bots and sort of farms of people commenting on social media. So do you have a strategy for combating this pernicious sort of disinformation menace?
I think that we learned a lot. Obviously, we learned a lot in the last election, in the 2016 election,
Yeah.
about how social media was used by some of our adversaries. And I think that companies like Facebook and Twitter have, gone to great lengths to ensure that it's not going to happen again. To the best of their ability. I think DHS, Homeland Security, has also gotten involved, and they're helping advise companies on how to ensure that it doesn't happen again. But I'm going to go back to mobile because I'll tell
Yeah.
you, it's still the wide open platform
Okay.
for the adversaries, because no one's thinking, hey, how should I protect that device? How should I protect the candidate themselves? How should I protect the staffers? How should I protect the voters? How should I protect the voting app in the absentee ballot type situation?
Yep.
I don't think that that's being considered. So
Hmm.
they're in my opinion, they're leaving a wide open gap for the adversaries to have an impact. We already talked about various ways that they can engineer, a change in the result, through the text messages or the messaging apps, and et cetera, et cetera. So I think the campaigns have got to take a much broader look, and frankly, some of them already have. I can tell you, some of them are already using our product. I'm not going to go into which ones.
Okay.
As you can imagine, when somebody buys a security platform, they don't want people to know who or what it is,
Right. Of
so
course.
that
Yeah. Absolutely.
they can remain protected. So some of them are already doing it, but there's a long ways to go, in my opinion.
Okay, so obviously we'll keep the anonymity of the clients, but can you tell me a bit more about the product and what it's meant to do in this arena?
Yeah, sure. So our enterprise product is protecting the device from man-in-the-middle attacks. So that's as you can imagine, your device is trying to connect to every Wi-Fi network out there.
Right.
You don't want somebody to get in the middle of that connection and potentially steal your credentials or your data.
Hmm.
So we're protecting against that. We have anti-phishing product, and our phishing solution is pretty in depth. We're not just looking at URLs. We're looking at the text messages. We're looking at the messaging apps.
Yep.
We're looking at the browser searches. Things of that nature to ensure that the person is not being phished. And then we can stop them from, potentially going to a site that's it's not going to be beneficial for them. Just put
Yes.
it that way. Um, we also monitor, every application that's on the device, and we're looking for malware that's been, injected into those applications. And then the fourth areas are vulnerabilities, because what the adversaries look for is a vulnerability or in an application or an operating system that they can try and write malware or an exploit to take advantage of. So we're monitoring for vulnerabilities as well. So those four areas are the things that we're helping protect the candidates from. And We are just, I'll just say we're kind of a piece of mobile security. There's a couple
Sure.
of different, I think, of course, you need Lookout, but you also need some sort of encryption on the device to
Yep.
help you as well. And then some sort of device management tool that helps with enforcement of policies.
Just in general for people, obviously we all have mobile phones at this point, or smartphones or whatever. What would be your sort of comprehensive, like, just as a basic security pack? What should everyone have on their phones just to keep them as safe as possible?
Yeah, so every consumer. So Lookout's fortunate. We have a consumer application that's in the Google Play Store and the iTunes Store,
Okay.
uh, and it's a freemium model, so you can download it for free.
Hmm.
You get security for free because our founders believed in protecting the devices. And then there's of course some eye candy that you can upgrade to
Okay.
if you deem necessary, like identity protection and things of that nature. So.
Gotcha. Okay. So we'll start with that. I guess going back to the candidates back in 2015, 2016, there were all these reports about which candidate sites were easiest to hack into. And we did some of those articles as well, who had the safest, websites and things like that. And I guess with all the info around this, why are candidate websites and stuff still the easiest things to hack into? It seems, like we would have learned by now. What advice would you give for candidates, obviously, other than, get Lookout? What advice would you give them to harden their security profile in general?
Yeah, I'll say a couple of things here. One is it probably boils down to money.
Okay.
I think that they have cyber budgets,
Yeah.
but do they necessarily have the expertise as part of their campaign to help them lock systems down?
Okay.
So, I think that they need to be able to use some of the donations that they get to ensure that they're secure. And I don't know that they have the ability to do that today. So that's one thing. And then you mentioned, mobile or Lookout, protecting their mobile devices.
Yep.
I'll say that the mobile device is, as I mentioned earlier, wide open in my opinion. If I'm an adversary, what I'm going to try and do is to get on your mobile device and steal your credentials for access into the network. Because I guarantee that most of the staffers today and probably the candidates themselves are accessing all the data that they need to get via their mobile device, and they're entering in some sort of credential. So if I can get on that device that has no protection on it today, then I can get into the network. So that's another area they need to take a hard look at to ensure that they're protecting it adequately.
Yeah. So on a equally large scale, apart from bots and social media farms and robocalls and whatnot, there's issues like Cambridge Analytica, who can sway elections via marketing campaigns. So you said that in the DHS and others have sort of gotten involved with social media. Do you feel like there are enough safeguards that have been put in place to prevent things like this? And if not, what safeguards could realistically be put into place sort of quickly?
I think that I mentioned servers. Servers are protecting a server is pretty well known at this point. Protecting a desktop, pretty well known. Laptop, same thing. I think there's more education that's required, and protecting the entire ecosystem. I just don't know that we do a good enough job of ensuring that people are educated on the potential threats that exist when they're using a mobile device or a laptop or anything else.
Mhm.
So I think we could do a lot better job of just education in general.
Okay. So to that end, could we talk about some social engineering issues? What should voters be watching out for that's out there, or look out out of the ordinary? You said if a weird text or a weird thing comes up on your phone, what are some red flags that people should be looking out for?
Yeah, don't take things for granted. And if you get things out of the blue,
Hmm.
just don't don't click on a link.
Hmm.
Try and browse to the website directly, so that you can make sure that it's a valid link. If you get a strange message from a candidate out there, again, do your homework.
Hmm.
Just don't take it for granted. Um, Make sure that it's valid before you take any sort of action whatsoever. Uh, I guarantee if somebody's asking for a donation over a text message, is this something you would expect from your candidate?
Right.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Their traditional forms of campaign donations are, from the phone or face to face. So,
Right. Or the usual sort of text such and such, and then it gets added to
yeah,
your phone bill or something crazy like that.
yeah.
Yeah. Are there so are there any types of like education processes that you think can be undertaken to bring the voting populace up to speed about current security dangers? And are there ways of getting the word out about, the importance of staying safe online and on your phone, that's informative but doesn't feel, partisan to one side of one side or the other, or what have you?
Yeah, I actually don't think it is a partisan issue. I
Oh,
think
it's
this.
not, but I think it's, I think if worded strangely, people can say, "Oh, you're just trying to get me to blah blah blah," whatever. You know,
Yes.
as soon as ever, certain fake news websites, were reported by Facebook, it was, a smear campaign or what have you.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I agree. But I think that sometimes I like to just go back to the basics.
yeah,
Public service announcements.
right.
Trying to educate people
Hmm.
on how to protect themselves. I mean, it's in all of our best interest to ensure the integrity of our elections are kept sound.
Hmm.
So, um, that's and so it's both parties or all parties should be getting, trying to get the word out uh, in a nonpartisan way to say, hey, here are the things that we need to do as citizens of the United States to protect our election process.
Yeah, whoever you're voting for, just make sure that you're being safe about it and such.
Right.
So what's the balance to be found between social engineering concerns and out software fraud? What do you think should be the sort of main focus for this next cycle?
Yeah, I don't think that. I think that both are critical concerns.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's a balance to be struck there. I think both have to be equally um, pursued to ensure that you know we have, like I said, our campaigns are kept at the highest level of integrity. So
Hmm.
um, we've got to protect against social software vulnerabilities, and we also have to protect against the social engineering.
Yeah.
The adversaries are doing both. So it's I don't think there is a balance there. I think it's focus on both.
All at once.
Yep.
Is there any place in the equation for sort of ethical hacking to be utilized where, we can go in and sort of like look for possible breach points into, campaign sites or voting software or anything like that? Is that, do you have any sort of like preemptive tech ideas or whatever to sort of see where the holes are?
Yeah. So I don't. So Lookout was founded on ethical hacking.
Hmm.
Uh, the co-founders, discovered a vulnerability in a Motorola device via Bluetooth. They tried to disclose it and weren't greeted, with open arms.
Hmm.
So
Sure.
they decided that nobody really cared about the protection of mobile devices, and that's what they were going to make it their mission to do.
Right.
So I'm a big believer in ethical hacking. A lot of companies out there offer bug bounties, right, for ethical hackers. I think that the government could do the same thing
Yep.
for our election systems and processes. Just offer some bounty out there for the ethical hackers to go test the integrity of the systems to see if they can get in, and I think it would help them out immensely.
Yeah, and when you hear of so many old, like really old voting machines that have, old like firmware issues and things like that, it seems like someone needs to raise some money somewhere to sort of get a lot of these things up to date. You hear so many things about like old voting machines and no one's doing anything to sort of patch them and things like that. But I don't know if you were to be given a magic legislative gavel to put a passel of laws into place to make voting safer and more accurate, like apart from doing things on the technical level, what laws do you think would it be possible to enact to make this happen?
Yeah, I'd love to see some mandates in regard to mobile security, and
Yeah.
there's none exist today.
Hmm.
I've been on Capitol Hill speaking with a lot of legislators about, they're trying to raise the awareness, and they all agree that it's something that needs to be focused on, but nobody's put together any legislation yet to try and mandate the protection of the mobile devices. There's a lot of mandates out there for your traditional desktop and your laptop,
Right.
to ensure, you got to have anti-phishing, you got to have antivirus, and you have to have DLP for, or for insider threats.
Yep.
But nothing for a mobile device. So
Hmm.
I think some sort of mandate needs to exist so that organizations understand that, hey, this is important and it's something that we need to focus on and protect our candidates, our staffers, and our voters from.
Okay. So as we wrap up today, we're obviously talking about the things that we're most afraid of and, the biggest concerns. Are there any sort of signs that you've seen that people are noticing, these things or taking preemptive action that they weren't in 2016? Are you seeing any sort of, light at the end of the tunnel or good news anywhere?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I think there's a ton of lessons that have been learned. People are, their awareness has grown. I think most candidates have some sort of cyber advisor in their staff now to help to protect them. I think that based on the evidence that the candidates have purchased Lookout as an example. Several candidates have purchased Lookout. There was a raised awareness. Back in 2016, we didn't have any candidates as customers. So now we have quite a few. So I think there is a raised awareness, and also say that the government has gotten involved, like DHS, as I mentioned earlier, has gotten involved, and they are trying to ensure the integrity of the campaign. So I think it's getting better. There's still work that needs to be done, as always, but it is definitely moving in the right direction.
Do you think there are sort of employment possibilities for people who, have a cybersecurity background who can do sort of run up to the election, sort of, cyber, not recon necessarily, but sort of cyber hardening and, people who could, volunteer themselves to their local political campaigns to, help with safety issues or their local poll office? Or is that already kind of covered?
No, I don't think it is. I think it's a great idea. It's a great point. They could volunteer, and if they want to contribute to a campaign, that's one of the things they could bring is their expertise to the table, not just going door to door to try and get somebody to, to vote for an individual. It's a great point you bring up. Volunteer.
Ethical hackers out there. It's a great experience. It looks great on your resume. Makes you very civic minded, and you might learn something.
Exactly.
Okay, so to sum up, tell me again a little bit about your organization, how to reach you online, and so forth.
Yeah, so again, it's Lookout, and we focus on the protection of mobile devices. I mentioned the 4 areas that we cover. So man in the middle, safe browsing, so anti-phishing, vulnerabilities and malware on the devices, and if you're interested in protecting your mobile device, you can certainly reach me at bob.stevens@lookout.com.
Okay, and that phone, the freemium phone app, is that just called Lookout on the App Store? Or
it is, yeah. If you search for Lookout on either of the stores, you'll find Lookout. You can download it, like I said, for free. And if you want to pay, then you can get some extra eye candy. So
cool. Bob Stevens, thanks once again for your time and insights.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay, and thank you all for listening and watching. If you enjoyed today's video, you can find many more on our YouTube page. Just go to youtube.com and type in Cyberwork with Infosec to check out our collection of tutorials, interviews, and past webinars. If you'd rather have us in your ears during your workday, all of our videos are also available as audio podcasts. Just search Cyberwork with Infosec in your favorite podcast catcher of choice. See the current promotional offers available to listeners of the podcast. Go to infosecinstitute.com/podcast. And once again, use our free election security training resources to educate poll workers. For information about how to download your training packet, visit infosecinstitute.com/IQ/election-security-training or click the link in the description. Thanks once again to Bob Stevens, and thank you all for watching and listening. We'll speak to you next week.